Ki nai monga, ki nai awa, ki nai tātou tonga o nai waka, tēnā koutou.
Got it.
Nothing on the screen yet.
So we've got a technical problem with the computer, so we might just carry on while we resolve
Okay. Right, so it was moved Sam, seconded Andrew. All those in favour? Any against? Carried, thank you very much. Any declarations of interest for today? No. Confirmation of previous minutes. Anyone happy to move those? Pauline, seconded Tim. All those in favour? Any against? No, declare that carried. Thank you very much. And now we move to the public forum. So welcome, we've got two groups today who get 5 minutes each for public forum to raise issues. So the first one is the on Barrington Mall. So Jill Kearns, welcome you to the table. Thanks very much for coming along today and raising this for us. Thank you for having me.
Dear councillors, today I'm presenting you with a suggested bylaw for your consideration, which I have outlined below. The intent is to eradicate the ongoing issue with beggars lingering and basing themselves on council property. The recommendation is for council to put in place a bylaw whereby no begging can take place near or at public entrance to businesses and all council-owned community facilities. The main reason for this bylaw to be introduced are public health and safety, allowing the community to enjoy our community facilities without being harassed, intimidated or verbally abused, the eradication of potential traffic incidents involving members of our community, general safety of our community, and likewise the safety of the individual beggars. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I know that the issue goes beyond begging to that antisocial behaviour, so that's really important. Do we have any questions? Got time for one question. Anne?
Thank you for your presentation, and realise that it's an ongoing issue for you. And I see that Gary's sitting with you, so I'm wondering if you've had conversations about how this is being approached in the inner city.
Gary and I have actually spoken because it is a problem actually Christchurch wide. Today I've got two hats on. I've got my hat on as a member of our community, but also I am the centre manager of Barrington Shopping Centre, and I see this being an issue right across the city at every shopping centre, but also other strip shopping as well. So Gary and I, yes, have spoken about it. It's a growing issue.
That's great. And now that we do have the timer up, there is a bit more time, so Mike.
Look, thanks for your deputation, and obviously we're seeing the issues of antisocial behaviour. My question is actually not to you, it's more to staff, because when we passed the public places bylaw, we made a resolution in there to actually request staff to investigate regulatory mechanism in regards to antisocial nuisance behaviour. And I just haven't heard any update of what happened to that, and that was actually a number of years ago. So I'd sort of like to know, because that's, if we had that tool, in our toolkit, we may be able to do something actually where there is a nuisance behaviour actually occurring. So I'm just wondering if we can get an update on actually that resolution that was passed by council a number of years ago.
So I would probably have to go back and check. It may have been the proposal that when Paul Lonsdale was a councillor, he had put up.
No, it was the hearings panel that I chaired. So it was last term, and it was passed by council to actually investigate this. But I haven't seen any update of actually what happened with that.
I would chase it up with policy unit, not sure where it is.
Okay, so Yanni, have you got a question for Jill or
Yeah.
a question for staff?
Probably both, but just probably first to Jill. Thank you for the deputation. Have you contacted the police, and if so, what's their response been?
We've exhausted all avenues. Our shopping centre is privately owned, so whenever we have a beggar, we trespass them from our property. Our property is not the issue; it's the issue out on the footpath and all other council facilities. That's why I'm suggesting this bylaw, because at the end of the day, the police cannot enforce anything until you pass a bylaw, because legally they are not doing anything wrong. The problem being is there's probably a dozen or so people. They are not homeless. Unfortunately, they're feeding a habit. They're not very nice people, and we don't want these people in our community doing what they're doing. Why should we have to put up with it? They're saying they're homeless and they need food, but actually they're not. And no one needs to be homeless in our city. We all know that.
It might be helpful to get like where they actually where they are. Are they?
Well, the police they know exactly where they are. They know the people, they know what they do a circuit of the city, they have someone drop them off in a car. The police have all that information.
Right.
Okay, so we will take this offline because we've got to the sort of the end of not enough time for a full question and answer, and we've got some other constraints this morning.
Yeah.
So Gary, you'll chase up on the
Absolutely.
regulatory thing that Councillor Davidson talked about,
Yes.
and if you want to send something through.
I just think I'd like to suggest that we have a briefing to actually look at this together as a citywide issue and look at what's actually happening, what we are doing and what we can do.
Yeah, we'll take it offline.
Can we
We'll
do that?
organise something to do. Yeah.
That would be great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank
thank you
you.
so much for coming in, Jill. Okay, next up we have the Sydenham Heritage Trust. So we've got David Rankin coming to speak, and people have been given an A3 piece of paper and some other bits and pieces with some information from the trust there. So welcome. Unfortunately, it's only a 5-minute slot, but we do have a lot of additional information too. So if you'd like to sort of highlight the key points that you're really keen to make today.
Thank you very much. Good morning. I'm David Rankin, and I've been authorised by the trustees to make this presentation, and I'm supported by Chair Dorothy Howard and other trustees, so I thank you for the opportunity. On the 27th of April 2001, the Trust was formed in cooperation with the Council to restore the former Heritage Church, which was acquired by the Trust in Sydenham with the support and assistance of the Council, including a mortgage of $412,500. In an email dated the 18th of October, Councillor Sue Wells stated, "Good news, the church is insured," and that was 2010. She also stated the loan has been written off in the council books. This means the council does not expect payment for it, but if the property was to be sold, for example, the loan would have to be repaid. History shows that the church was demolished without authorisation following the 2011 earthquake, after the Trust had spent considerable funds on restoration and much work, including re-roofing of over $750,000. The insurance was arranged by council through its associate, Civic Insurance, which proved to be totally inadequate, providing an insurance settlement of $334,000 plus GST, which was paid to council as mortgagee. Funds from this have been made available to the Trust to help with the site clean-up and saving of stonework and historical items, leaving just over $206,000 available in credit. On the 11th of March last year, the Trust wrote to the Council requesting financial support of $500,000 spread over 2 years to release the insurance funds held and to waive council charges to help facilitate the erection of a replacement building to go on the site for a museum, meeting room plus cafeteria incorporating original stonework and stained glass windows. I think you will agree that the plan as shown on the screen and provides an exciting opportunity to create an entrance statement for the commencement of the main Sydenham commercial area as set out in the project rationale provided. Your support for this project is a continuation of the partnership established between Council and the Trust in 2001. This project, if one looks at the objectives of this committee, would provide a strong sense of community, active participation in civic life, safe and healthy communities, celebration of our identity through arts, culture, heritage, sport and recreation, valuing the voices of all cultures because it would be made available to all in all ages, and it would be building, as part of the strategic priorities, enabling active and connected communities to assist with their future. We have a lot of support for this project and free engineering, and we believe that the amount that's being requested of Council to help facilitate this project is a very small amount compared with what similar other facilities have cost over the years. The Sydenham community is growing immensely with infill housing, and it's known that, and recently reported, that 1 in 13 people in our community have anxiety issues. So the more we do to strengthen our resilience in our community, the better our community will be for the future. Already this site has been developed and there's car parking associated with it, and the subdivision has taken place, and the Trust is expected to have some funds on hand. But we consider that this is a very appropriate project to justify Council support, and so we ask that you consider favourably providing the funding that we've requested spread over 2 years, which will be the 2022 and 23 years. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much for coming and updating us on that today. We've run out of time for questions, but we will request some staff advice on all the issues that you've raised and make sure that comes back to us as well, so that we can be fully informed and up to date on that process.
Can it clarify how much they want again, because it got a bit convoluted with the loan? How much are you needing?
We were seeking $500,000. And we'd prefer it as a grant, but if you wanted to make it a loan, we've even suggested in the proposal that you have before you with the papers that we're happy to transfer the property to the Council and take a lease back on it, the same as what happened when in 1979 when the Old Stone House was developed. I was actually involved in that project at the time.
Thank you very much. What we'll do is we'll request staff advice back on all of those issues and the processes and the stage of the application at the moment. All right? Thanks, Pauline. Thank you very much for coming along.
Thank you.
Just a quick question, Sam or John, are you able to get that advice through? I don't know, is there an application actually in the process, is there?
Yeah, we have done some work with the trust, and we probably will be in a position to get advice across. We'll have a closer look and get back to you.
Yeah, so that'd be great. Thank you very much. Okay, and next we move to deputation from the Christchurch Heritage Charitable Trust. So welcome Anna and Sean. And this relates to the Community Organisation Loan Scheme report on today's agenda.
Mr. Chris. Good morning, councillors. I'd like to I'm Anna Crichton. I'd like to introduce my team, Sean Stockman and Chris Houseman, trustees of the Christchurch Heritage Trust, and I'm chair of that trust. I'm not going to say a lot. Excellent report in front of you. It's detailed, it's got everything in it that you could possibly want, and I'm very pleased that of the high standard of that report. It's really good. So thank you to staff for that. I just want to say two things. There's an image up on the screen, and that's Shan's. That's how we found it. Now, Shan's is a loved building in central Christchurch. Now, how many private investors would take that on and restore it. Move it somewhere else and restore it. Not many at all. I mean, that's the sort of state that we had it in. And now it's fully restored, earthquake strengthened, fire sprinklers in it, and ready to go. The other slide I would put up is the interior of Trinity. Now this is a beautiful, beautiful timbered vaulted ceiling that is not seen anywhere else in that iteration, anywhere architecturally within probably the Southern Hemisphere. And this building was 2 weeks away from being demolished. So what I'm saying to you is the Christchurch Heritage Trust saved these 2 buildings for the City of Christchurch because that's our objective, that's our mission, to save heritage for the people of Christchurch as tangible reminders of our past. We are a non-profit charitable trust, and that is why we have come to you for a loan so that we may finish the work that we've already invested in these 2 buildings. I think that's all I need to say, but I'd be very happy to take questions from you, should you have any. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Do we have any questions from people? No? Just like that. Thank you very much. And we will have one agenda item ahead of yours today. So if you stick around, that'd be great.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so there's no presentation of petitions, that's all good. And, it's in the wrong order. So now we move to item 7, the minutes of Te Tera Kahiku Hiku, and welcome Chrissy Williams. Thanks so much for coming along, Chrissy.
Thank you. It doesn't feel like it was 3 months ago, does it?
No, flies by.
Just thank you to Aidan for having those slides ready to go. And as I, can I do Aidan or as I start presenting the minutes from the last 3 months, I just really want to acknowledge the staff that support us. So we have Brendan Winder here in this building as Red Zone Manager, but also the staff at Shirley Service Centre who provide supports and reports, the reports that we get. So just really want to acknowledge them. So we've tried to minimise my presentation today by including in the report some summaries, which I think are presented as PowerPoint last time, of the leases and licences that we've made recommendations to LINZ about, presentations we received, and grants from the for the Red Zone Transformative Fund. So you can read the minutes, but I've kind of summarised those in the front report that you have. We have also deferred a couple of recommendations where we think that we need more information about, or we consider that the site that the applicant has applied for is not appropriate for what they want. So we've suggested they go back and talk with LINZ and the City Council to see if there's an alternative site within the red zone that they could use. The other thing we're noticing about applications is that they're coming through because the land is effectively free for people. We seem to be getting applications that I would question whether they really need to be in the red zone. So that's, I think, a question that should be asked early on in the process. You know, why do you need to be in the red zone? I mean, for example, I think we might be going to see one about a show home. So does that need to be in the red zone, or could it be somewhere else? But the land is effectively free, and that's something you might want to consider as time goes on, especially for commercial type of operations, whether that land does continue to be free for lease. So I've just got 3 issues I thought I'd raise with you today. One is that in a meeting we had with LINZ in December, that, or a subgroup of the Te Tera Kahiku Hiku and the City Council, they told us that they were going to limit leases to 6 months. So this is in anticipation of the land being handed over to Council. I don't think it will be handed over in 6 months. I think we'll all be surprised if LINZ have got all the 29 bits of land ready to hand over. But what they are then saying is to people whose proposals are for longer than 6 months to go through to Council for their application. So two things I think arise from that. One is that the council needs to be ready. You considered a policy in November for how council will process applications, so that you've got the policy sitting there, but we need to make sure that the portal or whatever is used so that people can apply to council and be considered for transitional and possibly permanent uses. So that needs to be ready. And there has been some discussion, I think, but I think it would be good to progress this, is that the council negotiates with LINZ, maybe with the minister, so that the decisions on transitional land uses can be taken from LINZ and delegated to the City Council for the next X months, because at the moment it's incredibly messy for proponents. They don't know whether to go to LINZ, they don't know whether to go to the council. LINZ are really only considering transitional uses, though many of the applications are effectively permanent uses. So I think that may be underway, but I think it would be good to expedite that. The second item that's being discussed a lot with people in the community is around the long-term governance. So I know there's a lot of work happening on this, and some of us have been involved with discussions with staff and elected members, but it's unlikely to be in place before December, and maybe even take longer than that. So it's important that for your policy to work, that Te Tere Kahikuhiku continues. The terms of reference did set it up for 3 years, but not all the appointments are in place for that. So I think you'll be receiving a report from staff on ensuring that. And because of the late start of the group, mostly because of COVID, the 2-year budget has only been partially spent. So I think there's a proposal in the draft in your draft LTP to carry forward the surplus budget, so that Te Tere Kahikuhiku actually has got some funding to operate and also to make grants from. So just letting you know that it'll be hidden somewhere in the LTP. It's a tiny amount compared with what you're mostly considering. And I think just a reminder that there's a lot of talk about the co-governance group, but for it to work, you're really going to have to consider and be willing to delegate decision making to a charitable trust. And that, I know that will be really hard, but also to provide significant funding, to provide staffing and money for them to do some work. So it's not just setting up the co-governance group. There's a lot of sort of policy thinking and funding thinking to sit behind it. And then the last issue, and you should recall that the Greater Christchurch Regeneration Act 2016 was amended last year, but the parts that are relevant to regeneration plans and recovery plans will be revoked on the 30th of June this year. So when this Canterbury Earthquake Recovery Act moved across to the Greater Christchurch Regeneration Act in 2016, all the recovery plans in place were carried forward. So the Littleton Port Recovery Plan, the LERP, the Christchurch Central Recovery Plan, or whatever its name is, I always get the names wrong, the Cranford Basin Recovery Plan. So all those got carried forward, and since then the Otakaro Avon River Corridor regeneration has been developed under the Greater Christchurch Regeneration Act. You'll also be aware that under the regeneration plan, the provisions for the region plan have been inserted into the Christchurch District Plan. So there's a section for the special purpose Otakaro Avon River Corridor in the district plan. So the district plan really does say what the regeneration plan is wanting to achieve, but just in thinking through this, I think council has accepted that, and looking at your submission to the amendment last year, is that you don't feel a need for those regeneration and recovery plans to continue because they have been inserted in the district plan mostly. But I think it would be really helpful for you and for us if the regeneration plan was somehow taken on board as a council. I don't know whether it's a policy strategy plan, your staff can work out what you would call it, but that all the work that went into this isn't lost, because the district plan, what's in the district plan is very sort of rules-based, whereas this is more about intent and visions and objectives. So I think that would be quite helpful, rather than trying to seek legislation to continue it, that you somehow take it on board as your plan. And you may want to think about some of the recovery plans. I don't know whether staff have done the analysis of if there's anything still useful in those that aren't in the district plan, that you might want to consider adopting some of those recovery plans as your plans as well. So, and that's probably getting a little bit outside my mandate, but having worked on these for the last X years, I think it's important that all the work that went into them isn't lost by the revocation of a Regeneration Act. So that was all I wanted to raise with you. So they're sort of pretty meaty issues, probably more than the sort of the day-to-day work of our group, but they do pertain to our ability to be effective and having plans in place and having that knowing that there's going to be some kind of long-term co-governance group. So thank you, Madam Chair. That's my presentation. Happy to answer questions.
Thank you,
as always.
Chrissy. So we do have some questions. Tim, then Yanni.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chrissy. Just looking at the minutes and the granting of temporary lease for grazing, the Fens and our Port Hill Rangers have the biggest concern about where urban meets rural. And so I just wonder in those lease agreements, and I know that it's only for a short time to May 2021 because of the hopefully the transfer, but if not, if there could be something in there just with regards to keeping the grazing down, because I know that our rangers are overgrazing at the moment to keep everything down and safe, and there doesn't seem, in the 4 points mentioned, there doesn't seem to be anything mentioned there. So I just wonder in the future if that could be of an issue.
Well, you'll notice that we've also further down in those minutes we've agreed that any grazing applications in the Port Hills and anything other than in the Avon River corridor really would be a staff delegation, so they won't even come to our group.
Okay. Yep.
Because we're talking about Avoca Valley mostly, where they've been. They're single site sections, and the staff have to put a huge amount into each report for grazing. That just we don't even discuss, it just goes through. So it becomes an operational matter, and I think that ability to discuss with the people about how much grazing happens to keep the grass down, probably sits with Brendan more. So he's suddenly appeared beside me.
Thank you. I just wanted to just raise that. Cool. Thank you.
Thanks.
Anything to add, Brendan?
No, I take your point though. The grazing is deliberately done in those areas to deal with the fire risk, so it's not explicitly in the lease agreement. That's an implicit requirement. We're certainly checking on it, so there shouldn't be any issues, but we'll talk about changes in T's and C's.
Great, thank you. Yanni.
Thank you. I was interested in several, I guess, high-level points. One is I've noticed that we get the minutes, but I've been told that I have to go through Lagoima to actually get the reports of the agendas of the meetings, and it seems a very non-transparent way to kind of provide information. I wondered if the committee had considered, like we do at council, releasing things when there's no having a proactive system to release the applications and the information in the report, like the agenda reports, when it's able to do so, rather than waiting for people to lodge Lagoimas.
I'm not even sure we're subject to Lagoima, actually, but
it's probably a staff question.
Or official information.
I think it's part of the transition, and again, Brendan might want to add to this, is that when council's policy that you agreed to in November includes publicly advertising applications that have come in for 2 weeks so people can make comment on them. So the council's process will be more open than currently happens with LINZ. Right. So I think that's a real opportunity for then to consider whether the reports that come to our group then do become public even before we consider them. But
or even after you, like we often do, like after you consider them, then have a process to actually have them released.
Yeah, and we may need to redact some personal information.
There might be some confidential information, but
I think some of the built-in delay there is to do with the LINZ involvement. So the sooner we have it streamlined, that's going to make the whole process easier.
Right. And then the second question, high level, was where activities impact on a neighbouring property and a private owner, not a public owner, what's the process to engage with them? Is there a process where they're involved in sort of being able to provide feedback or being aware of what's proposed and the impact on them? How's that taken into account?
Te Tirika Hikuhuki is really adamant that there needs to be consultation with both neighbours but also neighbouring communities before the lease is granted. Again, that's unfamiliar territory for LINs. Again, once it comes over to council, I think that will be easier. We have had our staff have had discussions with LINs about advising proponents about what kind of consultation would be necessary depending on the level of their application. Like some things are an event and some things are quite long term. So, but yeah, there's definitely that requirement. There's also the requirement about consultation with mana whenua, and we've got a hierarchy established with mana whenua for that, so that people don't have to go again if it's for something.
So just to be clear, at the moment there's no requirement because it's LINs, but when it comes to council there will be a requirement.
In our recommendations, we usually try and say that there should be consultation before the lease is granted. But how that eventuates is really hard to know. So some people will do a letterbox drop, some of the applicants aren't even aware of residents' associations or a community group. So it's trying to link them with the right people, and we haven't had a lot of success with that. So and I'm aware that where we've recommended this in consultation, it hasn't happened.
Final question is a bit more specific, but on number 6 on the February 2021 report, 3rd of February, the temporary land use application for the Moon River Flower Garden, and it states that it's that it doesn't fully align with the regeneration plan, and the initiative is commercial in nature. And then I noted there was quite a split in the vote. And then there's some discussion about the fence. Can you just kind of give us some sense of something like that? Why that's been approved, and again, like with fencing going on to neighbouring property, what the process is. I don't know why the concern was raised about the fencing, but I was interested in that in terms of the people around it having some input and whether they did.
So it's in the green spine, but it's right on the edge of the red zone, right on the edge of the green spine. It does require fencing for security reasons. So the split in the group was about one being in the green spine, and one about it being fenced and excluding public from that area, because those are really strong intents for most of the applications, for most of the people in the group for the applications. This one went through because it was on the edge. It is of temporary nature. That land is and the regeneration plan is set down as a stormwater management area, so it can't stay as a garden for the whole time. So it was because of knowing it was temporary that the consensus, well, it wasn't even a consensus in that stage. We couldn't reach consensus. The vote was that we did continue with it. So there was quite a lot of community participation anticipated in the application, involving school groups and early childhood centres coming to the garden and doing things with flowers and things like that. So it wasn't just a commercial operation. And although it's called commercial, I would say it was probably it's not a not-for-profit, but it wouldn't have been making, it wouldn't have been a really highly profitable venture. So we try and work under consensus. It's 13 people. You know what it's like, Yanni, to try and find some kind of middle ground, especially when it's in the green spine, because we have we do have extreme views. But it felt that it was going to activate the area, and because it was on the edge, it felt it wasn't going to impact on people's access too much.
And so I don't know if they had any chance to provide input, whether there was any discussion with neighbours about what type of fencing went in, but I saw that was something that the committee discussed, and I wasn't quite sure why they discussed it or what the basis was.
It was discussed by us to say that, remind me if I'm wrong, is that the applicant should get advice from council on appropriate fencing.
The original fencing proposal was 1.8 metre wooden pale fencing, which would have provided no ability for anyone to see in or see out. That was I understand from a security perspective they wanted that. The applicant then went to our team leader to talk about having hurricane fencing, which we've seen all around the city there, which enables the community to see what's going on. It's far cheaper and helps activate that area. So if we put everything behind that fence, it kind of reduces the benefit to the community of seeing these beautiful flowers that are grown in their garden. So that was where the advice came from. Whether or not the fencing material to be used was discussed with the neighbours, I don't know. I suspect probably not.
I mean, it seems like a pretty sort of normal thing you'd do if you were putting up fencing. You'd talk with the neighbour. But
On the boundary you would,
yeah.
certainly.
Well, only if you're asking them to pay for it. Probably.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Thanks
And
for
by
the
having
update.
hurricane fencing, at least it shows that it's a bit, it looks more temporary than putting up
Yeah.
a more permanent fence as well. So
Anyway, that's good.
Thanks.
Thanks for the update.
Thank you, Anne.
Kia ora. Thank you, Chrissy. Thanks for all the work that you're doing and the way that you've, outlined the issues that you're facing. That's really helpful. I'm just wondering, you talked about the fact that people were aware that the land was free and were applying. Is there a really clear criteria about who can actually use the land and who is eligible? Where do people, it's not. So would that be helpful to have a much clearer criteria?
well, anybody can apply, and the way I look at the applications that come through, LINZ encourages anybody to come and use that land in a temporary way if they possibly can. So for groups to get funding, they need to, if it's over $5,000, they need to be part of a incorporated group.
Yeah.
So, but an individual can apply, like with all the grazing leases, those are individuals applying. So there's no stipulation about who can apply. There's no need for those people to have any kind of track record about having done a project like this before. So no, it's pretty open. Mm.
Right.
And again, once council's doing it, because of the connection with your community development advisors and your recreation advisors, I think there'll be a bit more intel about some of the applicants that will probably make it helpful.
Right, and that would be helpful too for the applicants to know, there's no point in continuing because we don't fit this criteria. That would be helpful as well, I would imagine.
I think you're getting onto difficult ground. You
Right.
put criteria around who can apply and who can't.
Okay.
But
All right.
yeah.
Genuinely commercial operations don't have any security of tenure, so most of them see it's of temporary nature and look elsewhere anyway. So there's a natural filter built in.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. It's helpful.
Are there any further questions? If not, there's some additional resolutions up on the screen now that address some of the issues that Chrissy's raised. So the first one is on the adoption of the Otakaro Avon River Corridor Regeneration Plan as a council plan, giving some advice on that one. It might, whether we do that ahead of the June cut-off, potentially. The transition plan and the work of the Te Tira Kahikuhiku group, getting some advice on that, and working with LINZ to delegate decisions on transitional uses to the council ahead of the land transfers to make those processes consistent, make it much easier and clearer for both the group, the council and for the community to work through those processes. So have we got any concerns about those? You're quite right, too, ABC. Yeah.
I know Chrissy used the term guiding document. Would that be a better term, or is a plan?
I
still
don't know.
okay?
I don't know what the right term is.
Yes, I'm just wondering
Well,
about
it's
that.
getting advice. So
Yeah.
you might call it
Advice.
something different in the advice.
Okay,
Yeah.
I
It's
think
currently
that's-
called a plan.
yeah.
Yeah.
But plans get confused with RMA plans, so
Yeah.
it's probably more of a policy document. But up to you guys to say.
Yeah, get advice on that one. Updating.
And so if we were to get advice that we could adopt it as a guiding document, that would come back
Yep.
again for another meeting. Okay.
That's right. Yanni?
I welcome those additional resolutions. I think two more would be good. One is a D, which is around advice on proactively releasing the reports, and the second one is getting some advice on minimum standards of consultation and engagement with the community over the proposals. I'm just concerned that there's a bit of a gap with LINZ, and it would be good to try and, even if it's just in the short term, to try and just improve that.
So the delegation to us from LINZ would help with that. We'll just get some work.
Releasing the minutes could perhaps be addressed in the report that will respond to A, B and C about the continuation of our group. So we could address it in there, but
Do we know, Brendan, who owns the minutes, whether it's us or Lynn's? Or is it a combination?
Yeah, it's a wee bit opaque, and I couldn't give you an answer right now. I'll find out.
Yeah, okay, so,
The minutes are actually really good, and it's really good transparency around the minutes of decisions from the underlying information in terms of what goes to the committee.
yeah,
Is the people aren't able to kind of read the context of the minutes if they're interested in the decisions.
yeah. So there would need to be some work done on that. So we could put up a resolution which asks for some advice or some proactive work on how to do that. And then Brendan can work through it.
Yep.
So that's some- Advice on. Leave that one out. Just put that one in. I think the delegation stuff should help with the. Okay. No. Okay, so we've got some technical glitches again, but there's wording going up, asking about the proactive release of the reports. No, minutes are out already. It's the agendas. Yeah. And and Yanni, the consultation stuff should be covered within the transition, the advice on the transition, and all of the work that's happening from now.
It just seems weird that Lynn's can give a 3-year decision on something and there's no minimum requirements for consultation.
Yeah, well, they're only giving 6 months now, which is also too short for many groups. Chrissy, would it be worth us asking them to extend that if they're not willing to delegate? Would that be useful for your group? Okay. Yeah. That can come through the transition stuff. It's currently called a plan, but we may end up adopting it as a strategy or a...
Yes, but that's one thing, if you're asking staff for advice, they won't, or if it's changed to policy strategy, which was in the PowerPoint.
Okay,
It might,
yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay, any further comments on those? No, do I have a mover? Mike, seconder Mel. Any discussion? No, in that case I'll put those all in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any against? Declare that carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chrissy.
And I just want to acknowledge Damana. Anna and I were councillors together. We used to sit beside each other and try and keep each other under control. You know,
That's great.
Well, it was just me keeping her under.
Cell phones and laptops. Yeah. Okay, so thank you very much. Now we move to the Community Organisation Loan Scheme application. So welcome to the table, Sam and John.
Kia ora.
So if you could just talk us through this briefly. I know that there's been some questions through, so if you're able to kind of answer those proactively for us, that would be great.
Sure, thank you. The loan report's in front of you. The request is for $1.2 million to allow the trust to restore the buildings as discussed. The loan would be to the Christchurch Heritage Limited, which is a wholly owned company of the trust. So it fits the criteria of the community loan scheme, 100%. Our recommendation is for 2 loans to make that happen, both of $600,000. One is from the community loan scheme, which would be charged at 2%. The interest would be capitalised until the point we tenant the buildings, in which case it's our assessment that they'll be able to service that $600,000 loan at 2%. However, they may not be able to service more than that, hence this usage of the Heritage Building Fund, which sits on, which is could be done as a loan at no interest because the money is sitting in the council as cash. So that's the basis of the recommendation, and happy to take questions around this.
Thank you. Sam, then Mike.
Yeah, thanks for that, and thanks for sort of preempting a lot of those questions. Just a couple. So the first one is the 2% interest rate on that. Have we looked at just charging, I mean, we don't borrow at anywhere near 2% for a lot of this stuff. Have we looked at just charging them a margin on our cost of borrowing?
So we had a paper to council in November last year around setting the interest rate for the community loan scheme, and that was set at 2%.
Right.
Now, there has been other larger loans outside of that scheme that have been done at the cost of borrowing plus a small margin.
Yeah.
And we've done that, council's done that when they take out a specific loan to make that larger loan possible. But loans from the community loan aren't done in that way, it's done out of council's costs. I don't want to dive too deeply into the council's financial operational systems, but that loan is set at 2% to be able to cover cost of borrowing long term and be a low cost loan as per the intention of the community loan scheme.
Okay, and then so just if the interest rates were to go up over time, do we effectively wear that hedging?
Correct.
We do, okay. And then just to delve in, I mean, I agree with granting the loans and everything, I wouldn't stand in the way of that. I'm just trying to understand why we wouldn't put interest on the heritage loan.
So two reasons. One is it would create increased risk around the trust's ability to repay, or could, and certainly to service interest on that loan until the point where they sell the building. That's our assessment. And two, the Heritage Fund is cash. We wouldn't be borrowing for it. So that's the purpose of our recommendation.
So in terms of it being cash, I'm just trying to understand how that exists when we have over $2 billion of debt.
Again,
we've been through,
I don't know if now's
we went
the
to
time to
inform
dive
this
into
when we've
it.
asked for a memo and some advice
Yeah,
to come
I was
to
just keen
us
to do
on
it in
that.
public rather than...
Yeah, that's fine.
I think the unequivocal advice that we've received from our finance partners, who admittedly are conservative, is that loaning the trust 1.2 million % at 2%, they will have problems repaying, and there's a risk that will set them up to fail.
No, John, the question was, how does this fund exist when we've got so much debt? So maybe you could give a bit of background that was given this morning on the sort of history of the fund and why it's still sitting where it is.
We'll try this go.
I think Carolyn Ingalls is probably best placed to do that.
Great, thank you.
So the fund was set up to purchase for council to purchase and on-sell buildings that were at risk of demolition. The fund has existed, as far as we can tell, since probably the 70s, and it has been used to purchase buildings in the past, the old government buildings, the Coachman. I think it was used as a facility in the Methodist Church at Sydenham and Grub Cottage. We had from a heritage perspective, it doesn't exist inside the budget that I manage. It exists and is held at a corporate level. We had assumed that as a result of the 2011 earthquakes and the council looking at its finances then, that fund had effectively been discontinued and absorbed into the consolidated fund.
Okay. So probably just
So it was a surprise to us, A, that it existed, and B, that it existed as cash, because we had assumed that it was always a loaned facility.
Right, okay. And probably just the final question then, if we're, in the context of 1.2 million, if we're concerned of $12,000 a year being an impediment on their ability to service everything, how comfortable are we in the entire ability to repay the loan?
The repayment of the loan really comes down to the ability to sell the building. So the plan of the trust is to restore the building, tenant it, and then sell it.
Yep.
Because it's, in their belief, going to sell more successfully if it's tenanted. So hence the structure of the loan. So once tenanted, we think they can service half that loan at 2%. And then it may take who knows how long to make that sale. It might not happen immediately, so there's some time built into it.
Yeah. Well, can I just signal I'd be keen to amend number 2, and I can flick it through to Aidan. Cool, thanks.
Thank you. So obviously I can see the reasons to. I can see the reasons why it's been split in two. So, and there's quite a big difference. I guess one has quarterly repayments at 2%. The other one is paid at the end when the building sold with no interest. I mean, a lot of that's obviously to enable the trust to actually be able to meet some of the requirements. Therefore, if the Historic Buildings Fund has a 850,000, wouldn't it be therefore better to actually put that loan up to 850,000 and then reduce the community loan to 350 to make it easier to service for the trust?
That could be an option. The downside might be that it would fully exhaust that fund. So
which was used last. Yeah. Well, it's a surprise to a lot of us.
Yeah.
So, Chair, I'd just like to, when we get to the point, move something that actually adjusted those amounts.
Just additionally to that, thanks to my colleague John, the 2% interest charge on half of the total loan council was providing felt like a fair middle ground and was around the mark that we felt that they'd be able to service that loan until the building is sold.
Do you want to then change mine so it doesn't put a specific value in there, so that if Mike's one comes through, it just it applies to the regardless of the ratio or the proportion? It's effectively just to add 2% to the interest on the Heritage Fund, noting that at the end of it, you know, it's capitalised and it's sorted at sale, like the staff have talked about. Yeah, that's so I'm happy with that. If it speeds it up. So.
So I'm just concerned that we had another heritage group come this morning, and if we don't have the advice back on that, so while I have sympathy for the amendment that Councillor Davids, no, I'm just trying to give you the context of the question. While I've got sympathy for what's been put forward as an amendment, I'm concerned about the impact on another public participation that we've had this morning. Can staff give us some sense of what the response has been to that? Because it would have seemed logical that this fund could have been used as a potential loan option for them as well.
You mean the balance?
The balance of the Heritage Building Fund.
So John, can you give us advice?
I can give you advice on that. this is very high level and incomplete. I've met the group and in assistance with Diane Brandish discussed their finances, and the group were requesting a council contribution of $500,000, a write-off of any development contributions, and a write-off of a council loan. Our response was that in terms of the building heritage, because the building had come down, there was very, very little left to constitute a heritage building. The main purpose of the endeavour was to build another community centre. Our advice was a community centre is not needed in that location at that time, primarily due to the proximity of other community centres. A council owned one across the street, a centre in Sydenham Park, and other developments nearby. So respectfully, the answer was not what they wanted to hear. We then gave them advice and said, if you'd like to discuss the issue with elected members, make a deputation to this committee. You're best placed to do it slightly ahead of the long-term plan, and also make a submission in the long-term plan, which is exactly what they've done. Our relationships have been very cordial, very respectful, but it would be inappropriate of me to give definitive advice on something they've submitted this morning, because I haven't seen that. But that's a general tenor of the conversation that we've had to date.
Yeah, so just to follow up on that, putting aside the request for an additional grant, just the clarification on the outstanding loan balance, how much that is, and have we written that off, or is that still on our books?
I can't answer in that level of detail at the moment, Councillor. I need to go and prepare an answer for that.
But in terms of heritage funding, that could be applied to that loan balance, right? That loan was for a heritage building.
No, again, I'd have to go back and check. I'd have to involve the heritage colleagues on that.
So can I just clarify? So we've requested advice back on the public forum for this morning, but the advice is that it wouldn't likely qualify for heritage funding, but if they chose to, they could apply for a community loan. Is that right? But it wouldn't qualify for heritage funding because there's so little of the heritage fabric of the building left.
Is this the presentation this morning?
Yanni was trying to work out whether he wanted more money left over in the Heritage Buildings Fund or not.
All I can say is that I think it would be wrong of us to give this committee any more information on a deputation this morning that we haven't had the chance to fully discuss with our colleagues, because this committee may use that information to influence decision making, and we're not confident that what we're giving you is robust or sufficient enough. We haven't checked it, so we'd probably prefer not to.
Great, thank you.
For those reasons.
I've got a question for staff. So you've obviously been working with the trust, not that one, Anna's one. And were they happy with your recommendation? And they felt comfortable they could service that?
I'm not sure it's my place to answer.
I'm happy to ask them. Anna, are you happy with the current staff recommendation, or would the current... Sorry.
She said she was happy with it.
Yes.
I think the trust is very happy to have the assistance of the council to be able to have a loan. How you allocate that loan is your decision.
My question is actually, Anna, for you paying 2% on the 600,000 as suggested. Are you happy with that?
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much.
We can manage that.
Thank you.
But if we can get it
Yes.
better.
And another question for staff too, if I may, and that'd be John.
Thanks, Anna.
So, if
There are often leading questions.
that's the intention. And also, John, is there likely to be any other applications coming for this fund? If we were to exhaust it today, this is not for you, Anna, this is for John.
Anna, thank you very much. If you could sit back now.
So, John, if we were to exhaust the fund today, there'd be nothing left for any other applications that came for that Heritage Fund. Is there likely to be any other applications?
Sorry, are you talking about the heritage or the community loans?
Maybe Carolyn should answer that one.
Yeah.
So Brendan and I have just had a quick discussion. We're not aware of anything, and our recommendation would be that council should manage its existing heritage portfolio well before it starts adding to its heritage portfolio.
Yeah, the report says that there's no intention to be using it for other things.
Thank you.
So, Mike, you had a question. Did you want to?
Sorry, it's unfair to call Anna down again, but
You opt use her discretion.
well.
Do you also have a question?
Well, I had a
for Anna?
question because there was obviously a leading question about the staff's recommendation, and we've actually moved something different. And I guess my question would be to the trust, actually, is keeping the same amount, the 1.2, but then reducing the actual amount you have to pay back in quarterly instalments with interest, a better outcome for the trust?
That's a leading question.
Yes, it certainly would be. Thank you. And it would be much appreciated if that decision was made and that amendment was passed.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm happy with 2 leading questions, not a problem.
Question?
Okay, are there any other questions
sure.
for clarification of either the motion or questions of staff?
Can we see the whole motion?
Yeah.
I can't see the total.
Just
No, I have to.
That's good.
Okay. Yanni.
So, just in terms of how soon could we find out about the outstanding loan balance amount for the Sydenham Heritage Trust? Because that was used for heritage initially, right? I just want to get advice back, and if we can get it today or in a tea break, because although I've got sympathy for what Councillor Davidson is proposing, I do feel uncomfortable that we've got this unknown quantity of this loan that is possibly being able to be paid off by this Heritage Building Fund.
Okay,
Look,
so
I'm afraid I couldn't give you an answer to that. I'd have to go and have a look to see where the information is. It's not the sort of thing I could commit to running away and doing by tea time.
So, John, just clarify process-wise, if the council is asked to write off a loan, do we need to find the funds from another fund, or is it written off within the financial system? So, Sam, you might know that. I don't know. Because
there are a number of ways council can write off a loan. This is probably not a question for us. We'd like to get some finance advice on that. There are a number of different mechanisms depending on how the loan's structured and the terms and the conditions.
I think there's always a lot of leeway in what we can do as council. So you may see that has a bearing on your decision today, but we're not able to get that information for us today, and I'd quite like us to be able to make this decision. Yeah, Anne.
Thank you. Just wanted to clarify with staff. So did I hear you say that you feel that it's better for us to put extra money into this now from the cash pot that we've found, rather than anticipate further need? So address what we need now.
So the trust is
$850.
the trust. Oh, no, I'm not necessarily commenting on that. I think we've outlined the pros and cons of what's in the fund, what it was for, what it's doing, and the impact on their ability to repay, and the decision sits with council.
Right. Sorry, I thought I heard staff say that they felt that we should manage what we have already well.
I did say that the council has a portfolio of heritage buildings, and I think that the advice from heritage staff would be that managing that well would be the first step before you use this fund to quite deliberately go and purchase a building at risk that would even temporarily add to that portfolio. That would then mean that council would have to find funding to strengthen, bring up to building code, whatever was required for the building that you you may purchase.
Yeah. Thank you. Melanie? And then Jamie.
So you're not suggesting, though, that this heritage fund could be used for council buildings, though, are you? No.
No.
No. Let's go.
Not for working on. James?
Thanks. I have read this in here, but now I can't find it. How much is left in the community loan scheme there? It's heaps, isn't it? It's in excess of...
Heaps is a nice term. Yes, so if this grant is made, there will be about 900,000 left in the community loan scheme.
So I guess, real simple question then now. Look, they've come along to us with a community loan scheme application of $1.2 million. Why have we got all so clever with it when everyone's actually pretty on board with the fact that this qualifies for the community loan scheme pretty well? It's a good cause. Why don't we just give them a loan of $1.2 million at 2% and then move on? It's just, it feels like we've got now 2 amendments and possibly a third.
So James...
For 2 reasons.
Yeah.
One is our assessment is that they cannot afford to service a $1.2 million loan at 2%.
Yet they made an application for $1.2 million to the community loan scheme.
Correct. And when we receive an application, we assess it for repayability and risk.
But they'll be charging market rentals, will they not, for the tenants?
If the restoration is completed with the 1.2 million, if they can find a tenant, and then our assessment is based on the rental valuation and the costs of trust, etc., is that 2% on 600,000 is an appropriate risk level for them to service. Additionally, $1.2 million from the community loan scheme would be by far the largest loan from that scheme, and would make up over 1/3 of the entire pot, which is a really high kind of risk in terms of keeping that community loan scheme available to others to apply. So we aren't comfortable giving community loans of that size.
Okay.
Anything further? Andrew?
Just as a matter of process, can I note that if this fails, I would be happy to foreshadow moving the staff recommendation.
Thank you. Okay, that's fine. Okay, so at this point we will move into debate, and then we've got an amendment of Sam's, which is one to include 2%, scroll down, 2% on the Heritage Buildings Fund, on the cash fund. So we'll do the amendment first, but we'll do one debate, and then we'll move the amendment, and then go to the substantive, and then potentially to the foreshadow if needed. Okay? So do I have any debate?
Just really briefly, look, I'm happy. I've obviously put up an amendment today, just to effectively balance out the loan that's being provided. The 2% over 10 years is actually a really good deal for the organisation. And if you think, I'm actually comfortable as well with the 50-50 split between, so actually the staff proposal, just with that interest being added. And I think you do it for 2 reasons, because the staff have clearly articulated that they can service the $600,000, they can service the $600,000 from the community fund over the 10 years, and then they will settle the heritage fund at the other end. That makes perfect sense, and I think the amendment will just strike a good balance between enabling the development that needs to occur, but at the same time protecting the ratepayer at a minimal cost. If you look at it, it's $12,000 a year for the interest on the $600,000. That's 3 or 4 ratepayers' rates in a ward like mine. So I just think we need to get that balance right, and my amendment would do that. So it'd be great if people could support it.
Thank you, Pauline, then Jake.
Yeah, well, this amendment here to the substantive puts me in a difficult position, because I'm happy to support the original staff recommendation, because I believe that it's a good balance. I think it's a good recommendation, and the trust is happy with that and can manage that. We've been told they can't manage the 2% on the other 600 from the Heritage Fund, and I don't want to stress them out on that. I don't see any point in exhausting a fund just because it's there either. So I'm happy to support the original staff recommendation, because I really do think this is an incredibly worthy project. The work that's gone into this has been just amazing to watch, and the end product is brilliant. It's shaping up every day. So I do feel comfortable that the trust can manage the staff recommendation of splitting it into 2 lots of 600, paying interest on one lot and not on the other. So I'll have to vote against this one, sadly, but I'm not voting against the project itself, so I want that to be clear. It's an awkward position.
Thank you, Jake.
Following on from Pauline, I won't be supporting the amendment. I think we should be doing everything we can to make it as easy and as stress-free to protect heritage in our city. I'm delighted to support the substantive moved by Councillor Davidson, which is something I don't often get to say about something moved by Councillor Davidson. And I just wanted to say that it will be great to see these two buildings progress. It's a slice of history that will be maintained and not left and ruined. And these two buildings are actually in an area of our CBD that has a lot of such history, and it's going to be great to unlock this city block for protection and public amenity into the future.
Thank you. Any further debate? James?
Thanks. Look, ironically, I would have supported a $1.2 million loan from the community loan scheme at 2% interest, like what was applied for, which Sam's amendment results in. However, I'm going to vote against the amendment only because I think you need to be consistent with the purpose of those funds, and historically there hasn't been interest charge on the Historic Buildings Fund, so I can't see how we can just start it now for someone else. I think that sets a dangerous precedent that halfway through a scheme that you change the rules. So I'll vote against this amendment, but I think there's merit in actually just having that fund closed up. So I'm probably leaning more towards supporting Mike's amendment, and then it can be done and dusted.
Thank you. Any further? Andrew, then Phil, then Anne.
Thank you. In my view, what we've got in front of us is a sensible and pragmatic approach. It allows the projects to be completed in a way that's affordable for the trust, and that sees interest rates on the community loan covering council's borrowing costs. On the matter of the interest on the heritage buildings loan, so Sam's amendment, or on the whole amount being paid from the community loan scheme, the whole 1.2 million, I draw council's attention to paragraph 4.1.2 in the report, which clearly states that the trust's ability to service the loan at that level is not there. We shouldn't be setting them up to fail, and this paragraph in the report certainly supports that, and I'm very happy to take that advice. We've heard it several times this morning as well. It's the Trust's clear intention to sell the buildings once they're completed, which will allow the Heritage Buildings Fund loan to be repaid at that time, and I'm pretty confident, based on past projects, that we should be confident that that will occur. So I don't support charging interest on the whole amount, and for that reason I don't support the amendment. We shouldn't be setting them up to fail. Clause 4.1.2 makes it clear that that's what we would be doing if we went with a scheme that charged interest on the whole amount. So I'm pleased to support what's in front of us has been moved and seconded. It provides the best support to getting these key buildings in a key site in the centre of the city completed, and supporting the Trust in their great work to do that. I think it's important that we do acknowledge the work that the Civic Trust have done on other projects around town, as well as these two buildings. We're fortunate to have a group of this nature in town. We lost a lot of heritage, some of it unnecessarily as a result of the earthquakes. What we've got left is very important, and I think it's absolutely right that we should put our strongest support behind what's here today. That's the reason I'll be supporting what's in front of us.
Thank you. Phil.
Andrew's just more or less said what I was going to say.
Okay, thank you very much. Short and sweet. Anne.
I'll be supporting the original recommendations as well, because I think it acknowledges the work that's been done behind the scenes, which staff do to build relationships with different groups. They see the big picture, and they come with recommendations from that understanding. I think it also acknowledges and supports those who are passionate about preserving our heritage. We want to make it as easy and workable for them, and it's about preserving our heritage, which is what we're here to do this morning. That's the point of this, is actually to preserve our heritage for our future generations. So I will be supporting the original recommendation.
Anyone else before I do mine and then we have Mike? It's an amazing project, and I've had a quick look through. The work of the Trust has been phenomenal, and the goal of just saving the heritage and not necessarily owning it, but just having it there for the city is admirable. I'll be voting for what's in front of us, but not the amendment. And my issue with the 2% on the heritage part of that is that actually it doesn't cost council anything. We're not having to borrow for it at this point. And I object to us trying to make money from a not-for-profit or community group. And so that's why I won't be supporting the amendment of adding 2% to that, even though it would be at the end of the time when the building is sold. So with that, I'll switch to Councillor Davidson.
Thanks. I think everything's pretty much been...
Sorry, yeah, I asked it before. Yeah, continue, Mike.
Pretty much everything's been said, and you know, echo the thoughts of Councillor Turner and McLennan. The reality is, one of the things, the good thing about this debate we're having is everyone actually agrees about supporting these heritage buildings and actually funding or giving a loan to the trust, which is really good. My motion is really just to try and put forward the best outcome we can for the trust to ensure that they have the best opportunity not to fail. Yeah, potentially I'd support it, the 600k split if my one fell over, but you know, you start creeping up there, it increase the risk. So I want to try and make it easy as possible for the trust, who have done some fabulous work, and they should be acknowledged. When you look at Manchester Street, you know, there's a couple of buildings that stand out, and that's because of the dedication and hard work of a number of people.
Thank you. And with that, I will put the amendment initially, which is to add 2% to the heritage component, heritage fund component of the loan. Those in the amendment. Yeah, there is only one amendment. That's Councillor McDonald's.
And then can I just have clarity around how we record concern at the quantum that Mike's shifting?
Well, that will be when you...
I can't see it on the screen, sorry.
Okay,
so it's...
So we'll do the amendment first,
Right,
and then we will move to the substantive. Yeah, but we do need to see the amendment. Okay, anyway, those in favour of adding 2% with the amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Any against? No. I declare that lost. No? No division? Thank you very much. Any abstentions? No? Okay, in that case we'll move to the substantive. And what we might do at this point is just look at number... Oh no, we have to do the whole lot, and then you have to move the whole lot again, that's fine. There's a foreshadowed motion to move the original staff recommendation. Yep. Okay, all those in favour of the motions, please say aye. Aye. Those against? No. Carried. Thank you very much. Yep, that's fine. So who hands up for those against? Sam, Catherine, James, and Pauline, for different reasons, I think. But, yeah. Oh, no. Okay.
And I'll just have mine recorded against two.
Carried.
So I'll just have mine recorded against 2.
Okay, and Councillor Johansson would like his recorded against 2.
Good to
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so it's... We like... Before we have a quick break, if we move to... We try and get one more paper done. Can I just have a quick gauge from people? Is there likely to be much discussion on the submission? On the submission? No? Okay, we'll go to the... Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. Okay, welcome.
Kia ora koutou. We're here to talk about the Climate Change Commission submission, which Council has prepared. I'll just quickly run through the process for you. We got staff feedback from across units, from Parks, Transport, Planning, the Policy Team, 3 Waters and Waste. We then had a Tuesday briefing with councillors. We've had a very good session with the Council's Climate Change Working Group, in which we incorporated feedback from councillors on the submission. We've also spoken to colleagues from some other councils that are making submissions, and also early conversations with LGNZ, and also feedback into the Mayoral Forum submission as well, which I believe you've got a copy for. Overall, we're asking for stronger ambition from the Climate Change Commission in terms of their early budgets. The key point's really that the first 3 budgets they've set will not really get us on target to reduce, to get us to the 2050 goal of net zero emissions for the country. Council itself's got a goal in 2030 to halve the emissions across our district, but the budgets in the Climate Change Commission's recommendations are only about a 17% emissions reduction by 2030, which we believe leaves too much for future generations to kind of make up in the later part of the decades to come. So we'll welcome any questions that you have on the submission.
Thank you. Pauline?
And I'm sorry I didn't bring this up earlier, but as you know, I got dropped out of the email trail last week. But I've got just a question on, and it's page 55 on your plug-in electric hybrids, and I have to declare an interest because I've got one, but this is a bigger picture that obviously you're supporting feebates and incentives for people buying electric vehicles, but you're recommending that they not offer them for hybrids because you can't guarantee that people are always going to use the electric side of it rather than petrol. But my question is, couldn't we have some recommend a gradual scale, so a lesser incentive for plug-in hybrids? Because I don't think anyone would buy a hybrid intending to run it on fuel the whole time. And it is a transitional plus for us in our climate change targets. So,
yeah, no, a good question.
Yeah.
I think it's all down to real world use, and the research has shown that, particularly in fleets, etc., that they don't get used like they should be used. They don't get plugged in, a lot of them, and there's potential issues overseas where they have put incentives into plug-in hybrids, where they bought them for tax incentives and don't even plug them in. Is a suggestion. So you get a cheaper vehicle, but you're not actually saving emissions in a lot of the cases. Some of the plug-in hybrids also, in those links in the document.
No, Kerry, that was the link.
he just turned him off.
Check that all on.
No, leave them all.
Don't touch. Is that all right?
Don't touch.
Good. So the evidence, and there's a few links in there in the document around some of the evidence coming overseas that, but definitely, yes, in the past, good transition. Who had utes that are battery electric? Good little transition, like the Mitsubishi Outlander, no publicity about that, but things are changing. There are battery electric vehicles, utes and other vehicles coming. Cars, they're here already, good range. So we do know with battery electric vehicles that it will be zero exhaust emissions. With plug-in hybrids, you just can't prove it. With likes of yourself, you will be doing it, but you can't across the board, particularly with fleets. Evidence is showing that they're not.
All right, well, that clarifies it. Oh.
That's great. Any further questions on the submission? No. In that case, so you wanted the wording on the oceans stuff? You just raise the issue.
We haven't actually added that in, but you're welcome to table any additional wording at this time because it was already on the agenda. So.
Pauline, if you want to, yeah, we could note it and then Melanie and I can sign that off. Yeah. Is that all right? Yeah. Could you talk to everyone else about it though, so they're comfortable with that? So we do it with the agreement of with the meeting.
It would have come through the office of the Chief Executive, I believe.
So if you talk to people about it. Yeah.
Yeah, I would like to talk about it because I read an amazing article on the weekend about the importance of the ocean in sequestering carbon. So 3 years of work has found by a dozen ocean experts that and they've also built the first global map of carbon stored in the sea floor and discovered that marine sediments store twice as much carbon as terrestrial soil, and how important it is to actually protect our marine sanctuaries so that we don't have bottom dredging up all this sea floor. And being such a coastal country, we've got a huge amount of coastline, so we need to protect it. So the extra wording that staff have suggested is that Council notes new research on the importance of protecting carbon stores in marine sediment and suggests the Commission investigate this further and include it in further advice to Government. Large amounts of carbon stored in marine sediment is released when the seafloor is scraped during bottom trawling, a process which also severely damages the marine ecosystem. So we request the Commission suggests that the Government joins international efforts to advocate for the protection of sea floors as a way to both prevent the release of carbon stores and protect the marine environment. If international agreement is reached, an opportunity also exists to count the protection of marine areas as part of countries' carbon savings under the Paris Agreement. And I think that's fantastic wording, and thank you very much for doing that. So I'm hoping that the rest of the Commission
people are happy with that?
agree with that.
We note up there. That's
Thank
great.
you.
Okay, is there anything further from the people? No. Do I have a mover? Melanie and Mike. Any debate on this one? Pauline.
I just want to thank the staff for the incredible amount of work on this, and it was really, really quite fun working on this, and we were thinking a lot about it. So I know it's been hours and hours of work for you all, but thank you very much for all the work. It's been really interesting, and I'm sure you want to say something similar.
Yeah, just briefly. I think one of the core things. Is that so? Okay.
Look, I think it's really good to see that we've actually put forward a very strong submission. But I was reading the paper, and it's quite right where Professor Bronwyn Hayward actually kind of called us out for putting in quite a strong submission when we're consulting right now on a climate change strategy that potentially is not that ambitious. So I really hope when we're actually saying this to central government, hey, we need to be ambitious and strong, when we get the feedback from our communities to be ambitious and strong and bold, that we listen to them and actually do that too.
Thank you for that. I think one of the most important things in this submission is the fact that we're asking the Climate Commission to make sure that they put forward advice on our nationally determined contribution, which is the contribution as a nation that we sign up for through the Paris Accord, to be much stronger. The advice from the Commission is that it's not strong enough to actually meet our contribution, our fair share, for keeping the climate at 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels. And actually our submission goes a little bit further and says that that's what we should be aiming for as a country, for our nationally determined contribution, not just net neutral by 2050. We could get to net neutral at 2050 and still not do our part to keep global warming to 1.5 degrees. And so the Climate Change Commission need to really focus on that 1.5 degrees and us doing our fair share, making more cuts sooner to make sure our planet is safe for future generations. And with that, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those against? Any abstentions? Carried. Thank you very much. Aaron, would you like that recorded? Cool. Put your diving mask on. Okay, we will take a 10-minute break now. So everyone back here at 10 past. So welcome back. We're going to get started. We've got quorum. So we now move on to the Arts Strategy Implementation Update. Nigel, if you're able to, and Nigel and Kitty, if you're welcome, if you could give us a quick talk through. You know, there's been a couple of questions through. So if you're able to talk to us about those, that'd be great. Thanks.
Kia ora. In terms of, thought I'd intend to go through, start with a couple of clarifications and in terms of just corrections in the report to go through, if that's okay. And then Kitty will give a bit of an overview of Toa Tutahi, and then in terms of a briefing on what we've done so far. So I just wanted to clarify that in terms of in 5.4, in terms it was supposed to say the 19th of February 2021, not February 19. We haven't been 2 years since the approval in principle, so it was February 2021, on the 19th, that happened. The other one is just to highlight the importance of this being a co-created strategy. So in terms of this was a co-created strategy with partners, but for the ability for anyone and everyone to participate and be part of the implementation of Toa Tutahi. So it's not a Christchurch City Council strategy that we're driving ourselves. We're a partner to it, but with others. And the other one intended to go through the figures that are in this plan that were approved in principle by the partners in February, in terms of the $130,000 that's circa committed to this and that will go through funding rounds with those partners. Council's contribution to that is about $20,000, which is in existing budgets, and it's work that we already do that's been aligned to Toa Tutahi. So I just wanted to clarify that, and that's on top of all the other work we've done. And you would have seen by email this morning, just as an overview, some of the work plan that the arts team has going on and how they've aligned that to the outcomes of Toa Tutahi as well.
That's great. Thank you very much. Kitty, anything to add?
Oh, just tēnā koutou. The work plan that we're developing, that we had developed as a team in council, is responding to the key priorities from the strategy, and we are in a way redrafting that to bring the partners on board to support the delivery of the strategy, and that's the work that's underway at the moment with partners.
That's great. Thank you very much. Do we have some questions? Jimmy.
That's 5.4. I just want to know that you create all those 3 years the program activities, whether it's under the action plan or implementation plan of art strategies, part of that or separate.
So in terms of the agreement in principle is aligned specifically to the art strategy, Toa Tutahi. So in terms of the funding from partners will contribute to, in terms of delivery, purely against Toa Tutahi. And this is in addition to what they already do. So Rata, for example, Creative NZ, already provide funding to the sector. This is over and above that.
But at the moment, we have no this action plan, am I right? This strategy or implementation plan. At the moment, we have no this one.
We have an internal one that the arts team deliver against, and other parts of council, of course, are supporting the delivery of the strategy.
Yes.
We are working on a joined up plan, and that's what's in current conversation with the strategy partners.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Yanni.
Yeah, thanks. I'm just looking at the document that we got sent through. I presume, is that the one that's coming out of the arts office, this project?
The paper you've got in front of you is an indication of the items that are in front of the different partners to be funded. So in terms of when we talk about the funding of the communication plans, websites, community art participation, hui's, workshops, residencies and masterclasses, and research and projects, they are part of the things that was agreed in principle in February to be done. What we're waiting for before that's actually confirmed is for each of those partners to go through their funding rounds to have the funding confirmed and committed, and it's not just a 12 month, it's over a period of 4 financial years, but 3 calendar years if you went through that.
So things like, for example, where you list certain neighbourhoods as key creative communities, how do we have input into where those areas are?
So we're undertaking as an arts team at the moment some desktop analysis of what's happening where in Christchurch, because that's of use to us, and it's of use to communicating with citizens and connecting them to opportunities that are close to their home. But we're also interested in those areas which have perhaps a higher density of arts businesses or arts organisations and activity based, and so we're just starting to look at what they what those neighbourhoods look like, what's going on and what is attracting.
So where it looks like Littleton, Sydenham and New Brighton, is that an assumption that work will happen in those areas ahead of areas like Woolston or Sumner or Mount Pleasant or wherever else?
The idea is that all neighbourhoods are included in the initial assessment of what's going on where, so that we can map that, because we don't have a comprehensive map of where activity is taking place. What we're also noting, though, is that our initial analysis would be that there are areas where there are pockets of either activity and businesses established, such as Sydenham, and areas where there is some reputation or heightened activity or conversation in the arts community around those places having a creative vibe, perhaps.
Okay. And the other question I had was around Ngā Toi Māori plan. Is Ngāi Tahu or Te Puna Kōkiri involved with us?
Yeah, we have a representative of Mana Whenua participating at the steering group level, and we are working on further engagement so that we develop a plan with the Māori arts sector in particular.
So is there a, sorry for my ignorance, but is there a specific group that's set up in terms of the Māori arts sector, or?
No, there isn't one overarching group that we could go to and have that conversation in the Māori arts sector.
Right. I mean, I'm not on the committee that, the Tihonanga committee, but maybe people want to raise it there who are on it and see how they can work together. I would have thought with things like the Red House and all the other things that we're looking at.
So Yanni, you're starting to get quite a long way beyond the scope of the actual report today.
Oh, this was the document I got that was about what we were doing.
So that was additional to the actual report that's on the agenda. But it's really clear that it would be really good for us to generally have an update on the broader in one place rather than ad hoc, I think.
So rather than getting the detail today then, is there a process for the actions that are proposed to come back to us for governance input? And if so, what would that look like?
I've just asked for an update, a broader update, which we can have either in a briefing session or something like that on the arts implementation. And it may be that we're able to have a look at, we can have a look at the staff implementation plan that you're looking at and whether we need to formalise that.
I think you're missing the point. So the strategy partners have agreed in principle to a plan, right?
Yeah.
What I'm trying to understand is at what point do we see the detail of that plan and have the ability to put things in or change things at a governance level?
So that is beyond the scope of today's report, which is why I have asked for us to get an update which will include that information.
Right, so there's no risk of agreeing to this today to then be told that the plan's already been agreed with our partners and we're unable to change it.
The purpose of today is to provide an update in terms of where we're at. We're not asking for...
We're not approving anything, Yanni. We're receiving information. This work is currently delegated to staff. And so we will be getting an update at some stage soon, so we'll make sure we book that in.
Sorry, if you go to 5.4, a meeting of strategy partners on Feb 9th was held. Staff presented a proposal for a 3-year program of activity. And so there is a proposal for work. All I'm trying to understand is if when it comes back to us, will it be too late for us to make changes to that program of activity, or will we be within scope to do that?
In terms of to go through, what that's relying on is funding and commitment from the partners to complete some of the pieces of work. So when I said at the start, there's circa $130,000 towards the implementation of council's contributions, about $20,000. So in terms of the partners and what they were committing to do, we can bring that back once that's confirmed and to let you know. But in terms of the council's ability to change what those partners have committed to, will be limited.
Yeah, it's not our role to approve what other partners are doing in the arts space. No,
and to add to that, part of the question, I think, also is once we have the funding rounds completed and we know exactly what's going to happen, and at the same time we have some benchmarking work that's being completed at the moment that's funded by Creative NZ to actually be able to articulate what difference Toa Totahi has made to the creative sector in Totahi. So we'll work through that and we'll bring that back. So the intention is that there will be one report that will go to all strategy partners, to the sector, to let them know what has happened but the difference that's been made as opposed to a list of tasks that have been completed, we actually want to have some benchmark data.
But just so I'm clear, we're being told what's happening. We don't have any governance input into the priorities, because what I've heard is we've got an agreed program, and our staff presented the proposal for a 3-year program. So you can say it's not just council; it's our staff that did that program.
As governors, we have signed off on the strategy, so that is some high-level governance that we've given in direction. Staff have delegations, and we are going to get an update. You have heard this about 4 or 5 times now. We will be getting an update on the stuff that you have asked for, but it's not within the scope of this report today. So do I have a mover? Yep, thanks Sam. Tim, thank you very much. Any debate? Yanni?
We've got to get out. We've got to get out of just being told what's happening. I mean, honestly, like, we sign off on strategies. We should actually be having some governance oversight of the implementation of those strategies, in a position to know what's being done when, what's not being done and why, and what priorities are being put forward. But at the moment, for us to be told that a program of activity has been presented to our stakeholders, to have had no governance oversight or input into that program, and then be told that you'll just get an update and be told what's happening, I just find that unacceptable. I think, you know, as people that were involved in development of strategies and signing off on strategies as a council, that it is our role at a governance level to look at how those strategies are being delivered, and to have an ability to raise concerns around where the priorities are if things aren't happening or things are being redirected. Unfortunately, I think the report in front of us today is asking us to agree to a program of work which we're now being told we cannot have any input into, and will only simply be given updates on. And I totally disagree with that. We have to make decisions around funding priorities. That will be something that we do on an individual basis as the applications come in. But there are some wider issues in the arts sector that I think we should be absolutely turning our mind to. So I can't support this today. I support the intent of what staff are proposing, but I do think that we should have had a briefing on the proposed program of activity and an opportunity at a governance level to provide input. It is clearly that our strategy's been signed off. There are things that are not happening, things that are delayed, things that have changed, and I think it's only fair that we have an ability to influence that.
Thank you. Any further debate, Tim?
Thank you. I totally disagree. I think that it's for us to partner with the arts community. That's what we've instructed our staff to do. That's what they have done. I don't think anyone around this table could really call themselves an artist, but I don't think, yeah, I think there's a few artists maybe, but we won't go there. But our staff have gone to the arts community. They've gone in with an open mind. They've gone there and talked with them, and in regards to the meeting of the February the 19th, I just can't understand why this is just such an issue. It's an issue by one person. I think that it's great. It's going to be good to hear from our community. And the arts community are notorious for being divided in unity. So let's just put it that way. So I think our staff are doing an absolutely outstanding job. There is never enough money in the arts. There's always a lot of support, but the money is an issue. But I think the staff have done an outstanding job trying to get them all together and move forward with strategy, and I look forward to the update. As the Chair has mentioned, 5 or 6 times now? Thank you.
Anything further? Jimmy?
If we review the council, the committee outcome, particularly regarding to the resilience of the community, arts is equally, to the culture, heritage, sport, and recreation. That's very, very crucial, to comply, implementation, our resilient community. I'm happy because council we adopt this kind of arts strategy probably at least 1 year ago. So how to implement those strategy more effectively, efficiently, and can totally achieve our goal of our community outcomes, very, very crucial and important. But at least today we are happy to listen to from the officer, feedback to us, this update status of the implementation. But still, we can go more better, But what is our action plan, implementation plan? What is the time frame? Because I review those paragraph 5.4 and 5.5. 5.4 we emphasize for the next program, the 3 years activity. But 5.5 we establish financials 4 years. Let's how about 1 more year where the funding come from. That's my particular concern. If next time staff or office can feedback us more clearly regarding the time frame, regarding all those actions, implementation plan, give us overall picture, give us more confidence to implement this one. This I look forward to.
Anyone further? No, so all of those in favour of receiving the information in the report, please say aye. Aye. Any against? No, so I declare that carried. Can you please record Yanni's vote against? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right, we now move to the Heritage Incentive Grant approval for the new City Hotel building. I'll take the report as read, but are there any new bits of information or additional things you would like to add? No? Are there any questions? Jake's happy to move. Tim, second. Any questions? No? In that case, I will move to debate. Any debate? Andrew?
2 words, please support.
Tim?
It's great to see this building, and it's history. It's kind of like the last one really standing of these old pubs, and that's got such history with regards to the rooms and the stories, etc. So it's great to see it being supported. So cheers.
Pauline?
I hope they're not going to make it too flash because I kind of like it the way it is. But anyway, I'll support it.
Okay, and with that, I will put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any against? I declare that carried. Thank you very much. Right, now we move to the Heritage Incentive Grant for 82 BDA for Eliza's Manor. Anything to add to this report? No? Any questions? Are you having to move? Yep, Mike's moving. Seconder, Melanie? Any debate? No, in that case I'll put the motion. All those in favour please say aye. Aye. Any against? Declare that carried. Thank you very much. Okay, and now we move to the Heritage Incentive Grant for the wire fence.
I move. I was first.
Okay, so James and Pauline are moving and seconding this one. Do we have any questions from council? No? Yes, I just said the wire fence. Okay, that's a question. Sierakowski? Yeah, okay. Right, in that case, any debate? Pauline?
I'll never look at wire fences the same way again. I'll take far more notice in the future. This was fantastic to see. And I'd never thought of a wire fence being a heritage item, but I just think it's fantastic. So I'll be supporting this.
Thank you very much. Jamie?
Yeah, no, this is thousands of dollars of ratepayer money on a wire fence. It's the principle of this. Absolutely not. Yeah, it's a wire fence though. No, as a matter of principle.
Okay, and with that, I will put the motion. Those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against?
No.
Okay,
Division.
Put your hands up.
Just record it though. It's fine.
Okay, hands up for recording against. So councillors Davidson, Goff, Chu and McDonald. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. And now we move to the social housing update report. Thanks, Bruce. Okay, do you just quickly run us through some highlights?
Yep. This is just a regular quarterly report. Some of the key aspects and key changes that have occurred either in the report or just slightly outside of the period include we have completed the sale of the Cecil Courts complex, which has released about $2.3 million worth of funds that we'll be looking to reinvest back through the housing fund into the lifting the quality of other units. So that's been very helpful. There has been a significant amount of work done on maintenance activities, particularly in the exterior of complexes. We've also undertaken a significant amount of discussion and planning work with particularly our partner OCHT, but with other agencies around how we can continue building new social housing. And one of the key things that we're working on is just doing some minor adjustments to the security arrangements for the properties that we've transferred to OCHT, which will allow them to borrow against those properties. That work will be taken to the delegates, in this case the delegates of the Chief Executive and the Chair of Finance and Performance, to get approval for those minor changes. But if they succeed, they will free up some funds and allow for a mortgage to be entered into to allow for further development. I'll save the details on that because that really should be OCHT making those announcements once they've got confirmation of all of those funding in place. So I'll probably stop there and open up for questions.
Are there any questions? Not that Yanni.
I just see with Cecil Courts that it appears that the person that's acquired it is just repairing them. Did we have anything that required them to be demolished, or there was no restrictions on what could be done?
No restrictions. We left that up to the market. Our assessment was that to meet the needs that we have, including the standards, it was going to cost too much to do that, and with the poor design outcomes that were there. Somebody else may have come to a different conclusion. That's up to them. We have taken the return and we'll be looking to improve other units that are better designed and provide a better long-term benefit to the community.
Right, okay.
Right. Any further questions? If not, do I have a mover? Melanie, seconder, Pauline. Is there any debate? No, in that case, I'll put the motion. Those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Any against? No, declare that carried. Thank you very much. And Mike, can I call on you for a here, please?
Okay, thank you.
Unahia ki te uru tapu nui, kia wata, kia mama, te nākou, te tinana, te wairua I te ara takata, koe ara e rongo, whaka I ria aki ki ranga, kia tina, huie takie.
Kia ora, thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. And please stay seated for the Finance and Performance briefing.